Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Samir. Thank you for making the time to join me today on my podcast. The goal of this podcast is to, inshallah, stop telling my own stories. People are tired of that, and to bring in some new perspectives, some new stories. So I've reached out to professionals such as yourself to come on the podcast and talk about your story, your success, and hopefully my audience, which is primarily college kids and early professionals, can learn something, right? They can replicate your success to the best that they can, and likewise, more importantly, they can avoid any failures. So any career mistakes you made, just put it out there and hopefully help people avoid any pitfalls in their career, because it's a tough time for everyone. So having people like you set aside the time is appreciated, and it's very important to the community. So without further ado, inshallah, I'd love for you to take the mic and introduce yourself to the audience.
First of all, thank you for having me. Honestly, I've been thinking about doing or starting a podcast or even being on one for the longest. This is really like fulfilling one of my shower dreams. Like I'll be in the shower talking to myself, asking myself questions. So this is just a great opportunity for me. So like a quick brief about myself for the audience. I actually know Muhammad from way back. From we actually did Hifz together in New Jersey and in Nida-Ul-Islam. But even before that, our parents they used to work together, so we knew each other from our parents' jobs as well. Um, so yeah, I grew up, born and raised in New Jersey. Went to school my whole life there, and then about 2 years after college, I had moved out to Dallas. So I now live by myself. I work from home. My office is in Dallas. I still work remote. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I think we can move forward with the next question and then get things rolling.
And so thank you, Brother Saleem, for that high level overview of your history. And he is correct. We go all the way back to like childhood in our community in Bergen County. Like people would be having dawats, and I would just see him and our other friends just like we'd be running around just. So
and half our friends were my cousins.
Half our friends, yeah. Your family is huge, and it's funny you mentioned Hifz. Like, yeah, we did Hifz together, and Hifz is memorizing the Quran is something I don't mention a lot, and I sometimes forget to put it out there that I am Hafz Quran, and we finished at Nida-Ul-Islam. So shout out to that Hifz school. I forget if they're still active. I don't keep up to
I
date.
think they are, but they have like different teachers and people handling it differently now.
That's
No.
why. If it was the same teacher, like I would definitely remember. You know what I mean? I'd be like, oh yeah, that guy's still there.
Yeah.
And shout out to Hafiz Musiuddin if he sees
Honestly,
this.
man, I feel like, I mean, like our childhood was a little different than what people go through now. But I think I wouldn't be who I am today without at least some of the fear and whatnot he instilled within us, right?
Oh man, yo, for real. But Hafiz Musiuddin, if he ever sees this, alhamdulillah, man, you have two students here going on camera telling the world that we appreciate your teaching, we appreciate your way of teaching us, which was tough love, right? Tough love. So inshallah, Samir, it sounds like alhamdulillah, you grew up in Jersey, you went to college in Jersey, and after college, you found some success and you moved out. So let me ask you something. What did you do during college that is related to your career today? Like, did you do any internships, any part-time jobs during college?
Okay. So during college, and I'll get into this when I have to like kind of I think talk about like what I would recommend for current students in college studying IT. But I actually missed out on the opportunity, and honestly, it was just a lack within me for not fully taking advantage of the resources provided by my college to get an internship or some sort of apprenticeship much earlier.
Yeah.
But what I did do, and kind of, I would say all CS students, at least at the college that I attended, I'm not sure at other colleges, they have to actually do a senior project, right? So I got lucky the year I was doing it, where my senior project was sponsored by actual companies, right, that would come to Rutgers, and they would say, okay, here we have this little project or like some sort of prototype, or we're try to launch this, and maybe get like a little demo phase going so we can start off with students. Obviously, like for them, it's a win-win. One, they're able to advertise themselves at this college, and two, it's they're getting some work done for free. So I got lucky. I got to work with a company called Chubb's Insurance Group. So that was part of my senior project, and then my final semester, I actually got an internship. I was offered an internship from a brother who was local to my community that actually had his own startup that was, flourishing. I wouldn't even want to say it's a startup. I mean, he had the company for like 8, 9 years before I even joined in, and he was partnered with IBM. So that was going well. That actually landed me my first full-time job. I worked with him as an intern for a couple of months. And honestly, I was very happy because I started off that internship with like 4 different individuals, and by the end of it, like I was the only one left, and then I was offered a full-time job. Um, so that was great for me, to be able to like get an internship that also offers me a full-time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal of internships, is that it's not really meant to just be this short-term engagement.
Hmm.
Ideally, you do want a resolution where you're hired, but then realistically, you also know that, yeah, if they bring on 5 interns, that doesn't mean they have 5 empty jobs. It means they have four,
Yeah,
3, 2. Like, there is a pyramid. It's the Hunger Games in a way,
correct, correct,
right? They are
correct.
limited in scope, but
But nonetheless, that obviously should never discourage you. I mean, from trying to get an internship. Obviously, one, because you are still in college, so
yeah.
you don't need to be in your third year. Like, I need a full time because this one guy got offered a full time by the end of his third year. I mean, like, you're still super young in college by your third year, right? So you have time. And then why I think internships are important is because, um, in like the tech field specifically, right? At least from what I know, because I'm not too indulged in other fields, but what you learn at school versus what you do practically at work is completely different, right? So I feel, at least me, like my first 3.5, 4 years at college, I'm kind of like, okay, I know how to code this, I understand code, but like, when am I going to use it? How is this implemented, right? Like how do the company, like a day-to-day lifestyle of a working class IT professional, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does that consist of? So I feel like having the internship kind of opens your eyes so that when you start learning, you're able to understand, like, okay, like I can maybe understand why I'm learning this, or I can maybe understand why I'm learning that, right? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times for me in school, I would be like, I mean, I get it, I'm learning it, but I really have no idea why I'm learning this, right? Like, we would do like discrete mathematics and like would have like random logics in it. And I'm like, I don't even see how this could make sense for anything. But it's like, at times you'll start working and then you'll come across an issue, and then like maybe just the way it's explained uses like terminology from that specific class, or like they'll probably just bring up like little things, right, where you're like, oh man, like at the time I would have thought this was not important. So again, like I said, internship has many benefits. One, you're obviously, I mean, if it's paid, great. If it's not, I mean, you still get experience. You get to see, have a little insight of what the day-to-day life is like. And I feel like with that comes not only the confidence of like being ready to jump into this full time once you graduate, but also within school, like I just mentioned, you get the ability to be like, okay, like I understand why I'm learning this, or hey, these things start to make sense to me more in a practical manner rather than just like A B C D. I'm just memorizing letters, right? So
And you touched on a couple of things that I really appreciate, which is being confident in yourself and being confident with the work, right? Being exposed
correct.
to work early on. And I think I love internships because you know why? I don't want to say it's a low stakes situation, but the you're learning more and the confidence you get, like that's actually a better trade off. Like even if you lose the internship, like that's inconsequential. Like what you learn is worth more. It's not even an even
Of
relationship. Versus in the real world, you get a lot of money, you have a lot of work. You get medium money, you have medium work, but
hmm.
it's even. Internships are the only situation where like you can learn up to here, and at the end of the day,
Exactly.
you're the only thing that can happen is you lose the internship. That's it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they're great. They're great to take advantage of. One warning though I do want to give people is that I see people who get internships and they're not prioritizing learning, personal growth, confidence, soft skills, communicating, presenting, stuff like that. Their mentality is, I'm gonna get this internship, I'm gonna be the best intern, and I'm gonna learn how to be the best at this particular job. The
Yeah.
problem is when you have that mindset that you're like, I have a specific job in mind and I want to end up there, and you don't end up there, it actually shakes your confidence, and you're actually almost worse off, I think, than you were before. So
Yeah.
it's good to be focused, but you don't want to be narrow focused, right?
Correct. Correct. Correct.
So let me ask you, so you went to Rutgers Newark, which is sorry, I hit
Your
the
mic cut
microphone.
off. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Then I was saying, yeah, you went to Rutgers Newark, which is my
Hmm.
alma mater, and I think you're the first Rutgers guy I've brought on here, which is nice.
Really? That's
Uh,
surprising.
yeah, yeah. No, everyone else has been a lot of folks from Dallas, from Florida. The only guy from Jersey I did recently, he's becoming a dental student at Temple. He was from
Okay.
Montclair, so I was like, oh my god, so
Okay.
close to Rutgers Newark, but just not
Yeah.
there.
Just not it.
So tell me what you did in college. Did you do any clubs? Did you do any, any research? Which I think in IT is probably not a question that's relevant, but some people do. So did you do any
Hmm.
research or did you do any extracurricular activities outside of your classes?
Okay. Outside of my classes, to be honest, I was only part of the computer science club. That was really it. And as I mentioned before, I should have done more. Let me actually give you a little background of where I went to college, what I did in college. Maybe that'll answer your question, as well as,
Yeah, yeah.
I guess, for my extracurricular, what I did for job wise during college days. So I went to Rutgers Newark campus, and I studied computer science. So I got my bachelor's in computer science and a minor in mathematics, right? Which was kind of something they forced you to do back then for computer science. You had to get a minor. Mathematics was just the easiest minor since Rutgers was requiring you to do like calculus one, two, three, differential equations, a whole lot of math, right? So for me to get it was a no-brainer because I just had to take two extra classes rather than taking like 6 to 8 classes for a minor, right? The cool thing though, when I went to Rutgers Newark, was that they actually had a joint program with NJIT, which is the college right across the street from the Newark campus, right? And the reason they had that at the time was because the Newark campus, their computer science department wasn't like fully developed. They were still bringing in like new professors, still kind of like building the structure of it, kind of getting certain classes in every semester. They were adding like 1 to 2 classes, which is why they just had a joint program because obviously NJIT being an IT and engineering school, they were like really, really well off with it.
Yeah.
And I even noticed that, right? Like doing classes at Rutgers versus going to NJIT, I would be like, wow, like these kids are much smarter than I am.
Yeah,
Like a lot of
unfortunately,
the,
yeah, that's the case.
yeah, like I feel like we were just kind of just learning to learn, but they were learning and being practical with it, right? Like they were learning something and they were like, okay, like go home and try it out yourself. Like they were a lot more hands on with the coding than we were at Rutgers. But so that was nice. It was a nice little motivation to like let me and the rest of my Rutgers colleagues doing classes there to be like, okay, we got to step it up because these guys they seem like they're already working for some big company and they know what they're doing. Um, so with that joint program comes both Rutgers and NJIT on your diploma, right? Which is awesome. Like I love showing that off, right? Like because it's like there's Rutgers and NJIT, so I could put either or college on my resume.
And not just that, that also gives you access to double the alumni pool. I mean, if you go to a company
Correct.
with a Rutgers guy interviewing you, you're like, yo, I'm from Rutgers. Likewise, if you have a job interview, it's an NJIT guy, be like, you're not gonna believe this. I am also an NJIT guy. So that actually helps doubling your
Yeah,
alumni pool. I mean, that's useful for your network.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, and then for job wise, so I worked at Walgreens in my town locally, pretty much throughout college. By the time I had ended college, I was a manager at the same Walgreens. Um, and then that was really my only job. And then boom, I got my internship. That kind of turned into the full time, and then it kept it moving. Aside from that, any other extracurricular? To be honest, not really anything academic, which is something of a slight regret because I could have used the time a little more wisely. But I was part of the computer science club at Rutgers, which was just a little fun way to interact with other students within the computer science department. And they would have like some little codeathons, whatnot. I mean, that was kind of fun, but I wouldn't say it was too educational. It was really just kind of like we were hosting things that students weren't a part of. It was just like people from outside coming and doing. So I feel like that would be something that Rutgers would need to work on with their computer science club. I don't know how it is now, but I feel like it should be more interactive with people who are members of the club rather than members of the club trying to make it an interactive club for people outside,
Yeah.
and just continuously have events and whatnot. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, so if Rutgers is watching this, you have another
No
victim who
way.
hates. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, so you said a few interesting things. One of them is the merged departments, the federated departments they call it. So like biology, for example, was combined with NJIT, where
Right.
you would have both schools on your diploma, and then computer science was the other one. I know recently that might stop because in the last few years, Rutgers a few like 5 years ago recruited this great professor from like Brooklyn or something. Professor, I'm gonna butcher his name, like Galthara
Oh
Kahanda.
yeah, yeah, Kahanda. Yeah, he's actually from Tennessee, not Brooklyn.
No,
So
no, but I
he's
think he
he's
was
originally from
teaching or
Tennessee, but
something.
he was teaching at a university in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like him and his family technically reside in Tennessee.
gotcha. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know they recruited him, and I noticed from computer science students I spoke to that fewer classes, that the separation didn't happen, but I noticed more classes were like trying to basically happen at
Yeah.
Rutgers. So I thought that was interesting. But what I like about NJIT, and you also touched on this, is that NJIT does a good job of recruiting people with industry connections, right?
Hmm.
So what that means is, Rutgers hires professors who have a PhD. That's like their thing,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
NJIT hires people with PhDs, but I've even seen adjuncts who had like master's degrees. What they care though is that you have like a day job, you've worked with like IBM, or you've worked with, for
Yeah.
example, with engineering, they love having people who are like with the MTA or recently left the MTA or NJ Transit, like
Hmm.
recent
Correct.
recent stuff, right?
Yeah.
Versus Rutgers, I'm sad to say this, and I'm not
Yeah.
destroying the school. I'm still going back for my MBA this fall, so I'm still going back to Rutgers Newark.
Wow. Okay.
um, but you got people who they graduated college at 22 with a BA, then they stayed at Rutgers or something or some other school. They worked 7 years and got their PhD, and they proved something about fluid electronics or some nonsense. And then they start teaching, but they like didn't even go out into the real world. Like literally, they got the PhD and they go right back to teaching. And I'm like, dude, what do you have to teach the students? Like, you never worked in an office, you never worked
Yeah.
for a company.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Like I would think about it the same way, right? Like if I'm learning something in one of my classes, and then I have to go out and teach it to another person, like there's a certain way that you're gonna convey the learning message, right? Rather than if I learned this, applied it in the real world, and was like, okay, this is how things need to be done, and like then I teach it to them afterwards. Like I'm gonna obviously take a different route to teach them and explain things to them. So yeah, that's a little advantage that NJIT has over Rutgers. But yes, Kahanda, for those of you that are there now, I know when he came in, immediately was made head of computer science department, and then
Yeah.
like those last 2 years I was there, like things were changing fast. Like every semester, new programs, new classes. Like we had more like 400 level courses. Um, but it was really all him. I don't know how it is now if they got more professors. Um, Back then, I know we had Professor Zhang, who honestly, like, she was a little strict, but I liked her. She taught really well. She made sure that like if you're in my class, you're gonna learn or you're gonna fail. Which honestly is not the worst because it's like what, in one way or the other, she's kind of like really making you learn, right? Which is
Yeah.
what you go to school for and what you pay all this money for. And then I don't know if you remember this professor. I'm forgetting her name, man. But there was this one professor at Rutgers that would come in, and it would literally look like she was reading off a piece of paper, having no idea what it is that she's reading, convey her message, and like anytime you ask a question, she would just kind of be like, yeah, maybe you should just Google it." And I would just be like, "Yo, who hired her? Like, I could go up there and do her job. But, hopefully it got much better in the years that I've left.
There's definitely been improvements. Like I know when I
Yeah.
started, like I would get frustrated with like professors just reading off the PowerPoints and then bouncing.
Mm-hmm,
I was like, dude, I could do that, but it's about the
exactly.
culture. And I will say this about Professor Kahanda. I've noticed the same things you did. So I forget who ran the department before him, but the problem with comp sci is that I noticed computer science and mathematics were sort of like a single department,
Yeah,
and
so I was
so
just gonna say that the computer science was ran by again I'm forgetting names, but he was a math professor,
math.
and it was ran by him until
Yeah,
Kahanda
yeah.
had came in.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of one of the things that led to some administrative difficulties was like you had a
Mhm.
math guy trying to develop curriculum. Because I remember like looking at the computer science curriculum and I was like, discrete structures, okay, a lot of math classes,
Mhm.
okay. I was like, they don't actually have you taking a whole lot of programming classes.
Yep,
Like,
yep. They had and I mentioned that earlier, right? Which is why I ended up getting the minor in mathematics because of all these classes that they make you take. But I had actually heard the semester after I graduated that they no longer required up to calculus 3. Like it was calculus 2, no calculus 3, no differential equations. Which honestly, those two classes make a huge difference because for me, like after my like my sophomore year, every semester, all I stressed about, no matter how many classes I had or what level courses they were, I always stressed about the math classes. I was like, damn, like I gotta do calculus 2, then calculus 3, then differential equations, then linear algebra. Like that to me was just like I panicked about that every semester.
yeah, damn. But you made it out, man.
I made it
We made
out,
it
man.
out.
I had to. Couldn't waste all that money.
And by the way, so you went to Rutgers Newark straight out of high school, right? Because I know some people go to community college first and then
No, I
Rutgers.
actually went to community college, then went to Rutgers. Yeah, yeah. So I
Gotcha,
went to
gotcha.
community college for a year, and then I went to Rutgers after that.
You strike me as a Passaic County community college guy. I don't know,
Nah,
something
nah, nah. It
about your
was
look.
Bergen. It was Bergen Community.
Samir was like, I went to the fancy one, sir. Like, don't insult me. I got the monocle and the hat.
Yeah.
I went to.
Nah, man. That place is. I feel like community college is really like, and I don't want to say this because I went to community college. Like, it could really be. You have to make it what it is for yourself, right? Like, you could go there and end up wasting so much time and not really taking advantage. But you could also go there, save a lot of money, do what you need to, and then like get out and keep it moving. So I feel like unlike some of the other schools where they kind of like push you in a direction to succeed, this is kind of there. They're like, okay, these are the resources. If you yourself want to come and like put in effort to continue moving forward, you can. But we're not really gonna do anything. So if you're setting yourself up for failure, we'll just watch you fail.
Yeah.
So
But it
I'm
doesn't
just
really
glad I
change
had the
our.
grind in me.
It doesn't change at Rutgers though, right? And I'm not trying to
Yeah,
insult the school, but I'll tell you if you're failing, Rutgers would just be like, hey, if you need another semester to do your thing, man, you get just
yeah.
pay us for another semester. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like, it is somewhat of a business, right? And they're making a lot of money out of it, man. Like, each class at Rutgers is upwards of $1,000, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
why
Believe it or
wouldn't they want
not,
you to stay another semester?
dude, believe it or not, there was a time Rutgers tuition, like I think like 15 years ago, was like 3,500 or 4,000 per semester, and I know in the recent years it was up to like 9,500. So every year they were giving themselves like a $500 raise.
Yeah, yeah, and they're gonna continue to do that. I mean, New Jersey is a very highly populated state,
Yeah,
right? And Rutgers is also one of the best colleges in New Jersey. I mean, it's like top three, right under Princeton and NJIT.
yeah.
Or I think Princeton, Stevens, NJIT, then Rutgers. That's how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's a no brainer. They're gonna continue to raise the prices. I mean, like by the time our kids are in college and we send them to Rutgers, it's gonna be like $25,000 a semester.
Oh my god. Yo, shoot. You're not even playing. I'm very certain that's what
Yeah,
it's
no,
gonna
I'm
be.
like right now. So when I was there, it was like 775 a semester. I think now it's 95. So like at that rate, they're definitely gonna be at like 18, 19 at least by the time 20 years from now. They're gonna be
Yeah.
at that price for sure.
Yeah, that just boggles the mind.
Yeah.
Um, Let me ask you something. After you graduated, right? So you got your
Mm-hmm.
degree, you're done with the nightmare that is RU Screw and Rutgers and all the lack of parking, high parking
Mm-hmm.
passes.
Oh man.
what happens next? Like, did you get a job locally? Did you, because you mentioned that internship where you got a
Hmm.
job offer. Did you stay local? Did you go to Texas right away? What does that look like?
Right. So I graduated 2020, right, the
Yeah.
year of the pandemic. So when midway through my final semester, everything went remote, right? Everyone was on lockdown. And I got my internship offered to me 1 week prior to that. Um, it was supposed to be in office, and yes, it was local, right? As I mentioned earlier, it was a brother that had his own company that was partnered with IBM. Um, and he was, well established, had great connections with different companies. I mean, he had we had Showtime as a client. We had the Barclay Center as a client.
Wow.
So we had some decently big clients that we did work for. Um, so that was supposed to be in person. I got offered the internship. Boom, a week later, COVID hits, and so like now my classes as well as my internship are all remote. Um, Honestly, remote sucks. I just want to mention that, especially when you're first starting off, just because like I feel like I was delayed for years to get that experience of being able to go in office in person. Obviously, the way you communicate with your team members, the way you carry yourself even throughout the day, right? Like when I'm at home, it's me and my zone, my area, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to get up, I want to come wear PJs, wear boxers, right? Like whatever I want to wear while I work.
I
There's no real like
agree. I agree.
right, which is again, I'm not complaining. I love it. I don't have to leave my house to work and make money. But I feel like in this field, it would have been nice to kind of have a little bit of that because it's not going to be remote forever. I'm sure one day I'm gonna have to go back into office and keep it moving that way. But the reason that sucks is just because like I graduated 3 years ago, man, and I don't have that experience at all. Like I've never like even the times I've been into the office, it was literally just me going in, working by myself. Like the office was empty.
And you're gonna
Um,
you're gonna have some learning curve when it comes to office politics and
mhm,
socializing,
mhm,
because
mhm.
it's its own psychology. I
Correct.
swear, I swear.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It kind of sucks that like I wasn't able to at least experience that a little bit right outside of college. But alhamdulillah, like I can't complain. I got offered that internship from again a brother locally who had his own company. I worked as a Cognos developer. For those of you that are unaware, that's a Power BI tool. Um, Worked there for about a year and a half. And then honestly, I actually quit that job just because like I wasn't seeing myself doing this for a long time. I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing on a day to day. I was just like this wasn't really just it wasn't built for me. Although it was easy, I was just like, yo, like I don't want to see myself doing this forever. So I quit that job. And then from there, I kind of had like a series of a run, right? I joined CVS slash Aetna as a business analyst. So I did that for a couple of months. From there, I ended up going to the state of Virginia. So it was like a government agency where I worked for.
Wow.
It's called Independent Living. They had basically like the state of Virginia had this program where it was like a state aid for the disabled, specifically those who were blind and mute, blind, mute, and deaf. So I worked on that as a contractor for a project for a couple of months. And then from there, I shifted over to ADP. I'm not sure if you heard of them. They're the
I
payroll
have heard
slash
of
HR.
I have heard of ADP, and let me tell you, when it comes to payroll, I know that's their thing, but they can kind of
Mm-hmm.
be a headache. It's a hit or miss sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't really know how it works. I don't really work in their payroll department, but the company's great. I
Yeah.
mean, like I enjoy it, especially for a full time. And then with things being remote, I don't know. I won't even mention this on camera while we're recording. Maybe I'll tell you a bit later. But with things being remote, like it's a lot easier for you to indulge in more than one activity at a time, right?
Yeah. No, that's the great thing about working remote
You're
is
on
that
mute, by
like
the way.
now I was gonna say, I mean, that's one thing I enjoy by being remote is that like my personal hobbies that weren't accessible before, like now they're a lot more accessible because I'm saving the
Mm-hmm.
time with commuting.
Of
And that's what I
course.
like about you is that like instead of having to drive an hour to come home and then play basketball or something, like you were mentioning earlier, that you're able to do a couple of different hobbies at the same time, entertain different
Mm-hmm.
hobby, and that's great.
Correct. Correct. But then again, right, with the whole thing comes like that self discipline. You don't want to just be at home and be like, oh, I'm at home, like I'll do whatever I want from morning to noon, and that's it. Like, so you definitely need that self discipline to, because again, like like there's so many distractions right around you, like your TV, your bed, like everything is right there, and you have no one watching you. So definitely need that self discipline within yourself to make sure that you're on the right track.
100%. And I'm in a couple of different professional groups on LinkedIn, on WhatsApp, on Slack. And something that really just makes me sad is a lot of folks right out of college saying, "Hey, I want a remote job in this, and this." And there's nothing wrong with the office. There's nothing wrong with hybrid. I think you need some water cooler experience. I think you need to kind of
Mm-hmm.
pick up some nuances of human psychology, because I
Correct.
think people forget like college socializing different from work socializing.
A hundred
Relationship
percent.
with your professor who you're paying money to, but is still an authority figure, that doesn't translate to your boss, because you're not paying your boss to train your teacher. Your boss is paying you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different relationships, and you only really learn that in the office.
Correct.
So
Correct.
and I
And I feel like the learning curve of being in the office is like it's much quicker, right? Because like for example, something I experienced was at times when I would get stuck on something, right? Especially when I first started, I was getting stuck daily, multiple times. Like I would have to reach out to someone and be like, "Hey, like I kind of need, I need some guidance." So one thing I would notice a lot in the beginning was a lot of people would be a little late to respond, right? Rather than me being in the office, I could just turn around and be like, "Hey, like, you know, can you help me out? Can you take a look at this with me for a second?"
yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I think it would be great to start off in an office and then maybe shift to remote
Yeah.
rather than go from remote to in office.
100%, 100%. You hit the
Mhm.
nail on the head. I miss being able to like just basically walk 2 minutes to some other guy's cubicle and be like, "Hey, I pinged you. I see you didn't respond. Maybe you're distracted or something else is going on, but I need help with this now."
Yeah.
All right. So that's something that I do miss about the office. I don't miss the commute, and I think that's what got people. I think people didn't mind the office so much. I think people minded getting
And
to and from the office as
yeah,
much.
spending the time. I think it's just that time, and like especially people who were traveling to offices where they ran into traffic, right?
Yeah.
That definitely sucks. I mean, that's a huge frustration and a little bit of stress you take off your mind every day.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Um, what was the job process like? Like when you were looking for jobs, um, what was the process like? Like how did you know where to look? How did you know what to
Yeah.
do?
So, me personally, and I think this would be like kind of a good advice for those looking to seek jobs post college and obviously like within their final year. Um, so again, I went to Rutgers and NJIT. Both schools have great connections with a ton of companies and honestly great resources, right? They both have like resources for career building, which help you from building your resume to kind of have like, I remember once they had like a career day, but it was not like a career day where they had other companies. They just had people who would kind of help you build your resume, take a look at your resume, give you prompts to kind of just go through and practice how to answer. Um, and and that was very very helpful because like in a way that gives you a little bit of confidence where it's like okay like this is kind of the direction I have to be in for me to be able to properly get through the process. That as well as like I said, great resources. Rutgers and NJIT they had on their or I think it was what, career day or fair day or something,
Yeah.
job fair day where they had like a ton of different companies come in, right? So for me, initially, what I did is my whole senior year, I would just go to a bunch of these different fairs, handing out my resumes, telling them a little about myself, what I know, what I'm interested in, kind of just trying to build a little bit of network. That work out for a couple of people I know. It just didn't work out for me. But then there's also, I think, a really, really, really powerful tool is LinkedIn, right? And I'm not too sure if it's too powerful for people coming right out of college, although it may be. But LinkedIn is definitely a powerful tool for you to like try to get jobs, build your network. Um, and then what else did I have? Handshake. I'm not sure if you're aware of Handshake. We had a Handshake at Rutgers.
And
But
I
I
remember,
think to
yeah.
try to get a job is like with college is like you should really try to use the resources that the college has, right? So if you're using the resources properly, then you're definitely taking a lot more advantage of what the school has to offer rather than just the classes. Which is again something I wish I had done more rather than just go to Rutgers for the class. I wish I'd taken a lot more advantage of all the resources that they provided for like your growth within your career post college.
And I wanna echo what Samir has said, and this is very important to everyone. Your colleges have a lot of resources that is paid for by your tuition. People are
Mm-hmm.
shy about doing it, maybe because there's a scheduling aspect. It's not always walk in, but they have an office to help you with the resume. Take advantage of it. They have job fairs where they're doing the easy work for you. Instead of you approaching a bunch of companies and setting aside that time, they will have career fairs, and Rutgers does it in spring and fall. I think the fall one might be the bigger one, but like take advantage. These things are free. You have to register, of course, but these things are free. Your
Yeah.
resume will be free. They'll coach you on how to freaking work on a LinkedIn. And I will
Mm-hmm.
say this: LinkedIn's important because having an online presence is huge. If I Google someone I'm thinking about hiring and nothing shows up, I'm gonna be like, "Yo, why is this person a ghost?"
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So use the resources of your college. Now, we went to Rutgers, a public school. I don't know if it's the same for private universities. They might not offer these things. They might not have to, but the office of like career services or whatever. For us, I think it was in like Hill Hall or something. They'll help you
Mm-hmm.
with the resume. They'll help you with like the job fair, getting signed up for the job fair, making sure
Mm-hmm.
you got to suit up and everything. And
Of
then
course.
you go around, you give your resume to a bunch of companies, and oftentimes people leave with like either a business card for someone to keep in touch, or they
Mm-hmm.
leave with an internship or a job offer. And it's everyone. Fortune 500 companies are coming here. Pharma
Yeah.
companies like BMS or Johnson and Johnson show up at these job fairs, and that's Rutgers,
Yeah.
Newark. Rutgers, New Brunswick. I'm told is even
I heard like
crazier.
Facebook, Google, and these like top five show up there. The big five, like I heard they pull it up at Rutgers, New Brunswick.
Yeah, yeah, no, I have heard the same thing that Rutgers, New Brunswick crowd have been blessed, right?
Yeah.
We like to say that people ask if Rutgers Newark is a second class citizen, and I'm just like not in every regard. It's not that
Yeah.
we're all taking classes in like a tent. Like they put a lot of work
Yeah.
into the library, they put a lot of work into the business school, they put a lot of
For
work
sure.
into the
For
law
sure.
school. So like they do put money, but then yeah, you hear stories about this where like Google shows up there, and you're just like, dang, what are we doing wrong? But
Yeah. Yeah.
these
Yeah.
resources are, the
Yeah.
job fairs, academic services. Please, please, please take advantage. I'm seeing
Yeah.
way too many people in my professional groups paying people to work on their resume to help them with interview skills. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
The office at Rutgers would tell you like, hey, dress up nicely, have eye contact, send a thank you
Yeah.
after. I mean, sometimes I think the advice was old school. Like they would be like, send a gift basket after, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not hitting up edible
Yeah.
arrangements for like a
Yeah.
office assistant. Chill, like no.
Yeah, yeah, maybe in some crazy position, but definitely not at the level that I'm trying to be at right now.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. I mean, you were working here, you had employment here, good employment here. What got you from the green garden pastures of New Jersey to the desert that is Texas?
Believe it or not, man, it's greener out here. So much more green land, pure air. Like everyone I know that comes out here and then goes back to Jersey is like, yo, like the air here is different.
Oh,
Um,
this man is being flagrant right now. He is a menace, hostile witness, greener than the Garden State. Now I believe him. I've been to Dallas. I've done business in Dallas.
yeah,
It's a lot better, especially the roads. I hate to say it, roads are cleaner and nicer.
yeah,
No potholes.
and bigger.
Yeah.
But really, what it was, man, I'm just kind of like, for me, I'm just moving into a different phase of life, right? It's no more like college, young era. Like life is moving really, really fast, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
already 25 almost, and like for I know it, I'm gonna be like closer to my freshman year at college is marriage and kids, right? More than likely, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But Basically, I've had a couple of family members here, visited a ton throughout the college years, and I just really always like the environment that they have set up here. And I'll get a little into detail with that, right? So, the environment, what I mean is like the social environment, whether that be within the masjids, whether that be just out and about, right? Like, there's so many things that the community has going for its people, and a lot of the people are actually involved and indulged within these community activities. So it's like a great way for like you to just have that little motivation. You know, everyone is out and about doing something rather than just chilling at home and being about, just some BS, right? Which I felt was a lot of what was going on the East Coast. Um, and it's just like it just seems like everyone here is on a better mindset. A lot of the people here are very calm. You don't see no rowdy people at the stores. Like, you're not running into any sort of like trouble. Um, and even with the masjids, right? Like, obviously, eventually, like, I'm gonna have kids. I want to raise my kids, and I think it's a great environment for them to be. Like the masjids here, man. I'm not sure if you're aware, but like, Epic has like a robotics club, right? They have like these a bunch of different things that aren't just like related to faith, right? Like, and I feel like that's a great way to pull in the crowd, right? Whether it be like you going to the masjid to be like, oh, hey, I'm gonna go play basketball,
Yeah.
and you use basketball as an excuse where you end up praying Isha Salah, right? And I feel like that's a great way for you to like slowly get involved within the masjid. And then, like I said, the community itself has a ton of things going on. I just yesterday joined the recreational center, right? And it's super cheap. It's like $150 for the year. They have 5 centers within Plano City. They all have indoor pools, outdoor pools, like tennis courts, racquetball courts, basketball courts, full-on gym, indoor track, outdoor track, soccer field, and it's like, who wouldn't want to join that, right? Like, I'm not trying to pay $60 at 24 Hour Fitness for half of that when I could pay 155 for the year, right? So, like I said, man, and then on top of everything, it's a climate, right? Like, honestly, like, for me, when it's sunny and bright outside, I feel productive. I feel good. I don't like gloomy days. So being able to wake up at 7 a.m. and have a sunny, bright morning, 350 days out of the year is great. Like, I feel like your productivity and your happiness is just shooting up. Your serotonin levels are just different.
Absolutely.
So
I've heard a lot of your testimony before. People love the climate, the weather, and people who are gonna be parents, they look at their houses of worship and they look at what is this gonna do for my kid. I mean, I want my kid to grow up intellectually, but I also want them to grow up socially around other kids in a controlled environment. So I know Epic Masjid has a lot of programs that unfortunately I didn't see myself and we didn't see here in Bergen County at these masjids.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people also, the vibe is different. It's a lot more
Yeah.
community there. Like here, people have an edge. Everyone has an
Yeah.
agenda, and people don't collaborate as much, right?
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
I was in Dallas, and I was basically like, "Hey everyone, my name is Mohammed. I'm a CIO. I do management consulting. I have my own company. I've worked with government, Fortune 500 companies, startups. Like people were listening to me. They were taking my contact info, and like we still keep in touch. Like I've had people refer me to like hospitals down there or weapons companies like RTX, and or even insurance companies like I think it was State Farm or Progressive. I forget which one.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the great thing. But here in Teaneck or here in Jersey, dude, like if you're looking to make moves or collaborate, people are like, I gotta think about it. I'm not sure. Yeah, they won't even take like your like I have a business card. People won't even take your business card because they go like, oh, I don't know if I'll need it. And we're a lot of insular here. We're very individualistic here, and in Dallas, people collaborate. There's that synergy and there's that young energy. I mean, I feel like here there's nobody doing startup stuff at the masjid, but at Epic, what I like is that Epic has the Epic Suites, and if you have like a startup, you can talk to them about renting out like a space. And I've seen some amazing startups there, man. I saw this startup called like Ruh. It's making some sort of meditation app. I thought that was beautiful, right? Like an Islamic meditation app, because we've seen all the ones that the Gora people have come out with, right?
Sorry.
And then there was also a fintech company, a halal fintech company called Fursa Capital, it had like a FINRA license, an SEC license. I was blown away by the progress the brother had made. So I love it because
Yeah,
like
and
there's
I feel like just being around that just kind of motivates you to be better, right? And I don't know about other people, but I love just progressing and being better than I was yesterday,
yeah.
um, all the time. If I'm not progressing forward, I just feel like I'm falling behind.
Oh, 100%,
Yeah,
100%. And you're in a good place to be. I think Dallas has set you up for success because also
yeah,
there's
inshallah,
a lot
man.
of companies are down there. Like forget about the people aspect for a
Yeah,
moment even. Like even if people were like New York, the fact that all the companies are there, like New York does not have a lot of industry. It's like Wall Street, a couple of hospitals and that's it, unfortunately.
yep, yep,
But Dallas has everything and when I was there, I was like, yo, every building has like a company name on it. Like they are everywhere.
yeah, for sure. Um, and yo, it's so cheap to live out here. Gas on average is $1 cheaper than what it normally is up there. Rent extremely cheap. The apartment I have right now, what I pay for an apartment like this, I was looking in New Jersey, right, like around Hackensack area where they're having new builds. Exact kind of like setup throughout the apartment is costing me almost 200% more. It's literally almost double the
Yeah.
price, right? And I'm like, with all the money I save every month, I could just travel the world, right? Like it's not worth me paying all that money to be there. And even if I was gonna stay in New Jersey, I mean, I wouldn't rent anything. I just move back in with my parents.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, the cost of living is also a huge boon because I know the cost of living in Dallas is less, but to my
hmm
knowledge, because I've interviewed with companies there, the salary is actually still quite high.
Especially like within the professional fields, right? Obviously, if you go to like you're showing up to Walgreens or something, their minimum wage is a lot lower than
Yeah.
up there. But yeah, and the thing is, there's no state tax here, right? So I noticed I was working at the same company back in New Jersey as I am now, and I noticed when I changed my residence, I gained 4% extra on my paycheck each paycheck. So
And
that's
that adds
great.
up. That adds up.
Yeah, that starts to add up every month. Like that's a bill adding up. You know that you get to save every month.
No, that's definitely excellent. And Samir's being an accidental ambassador for Dallas, just like everyone I've talked to, everyone has said it. Like everyone's always trying to get me down there, and I'm always like, look,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, as long as it makes sense, like if I line up some management IT role, I'm happy to roll
hmm
through.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like, man, I try to tell a lot of people, man, like just don't think about it. Come down here, and then you'll understand. Cause me too. Like me, I was like, yo, like I've been there a bunch of times. I like it, but there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
Like, and honestly, I stick by that. Like Friday comes around, I get super excited, and then I'm like, why am I excited? There's nothing to do. Like literally, not. It's the same things you would do every other day.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's
funny,
that's the
man.
only downside, but I feel like with all the other positives to it, it's worth it.
Oh, it's absolutely worth it. And let me ask you, you're remote right now, but your
hmm
apartment, how far is it from like your job site if you ever had to commute? Like,
11 minutes. So I actually live right off the highway. To get onto the highway takes me 30 seconds. And my company is just all the way down 11 minutes right off the highway. So the
excellent.
commute isn't bad.
Oh, that sounds like a dream, man. I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah,
You want to be close to work, even if you don't have to go, and it's good
yeah.
that you have that.
Even Dallas City itself is about 25 minutes from where I am. So 25 minutes really isn't that bad. The only bad thing about Dallas area is if something is 25 minutes away, you're driving 25 miles, right? So for
Yeah,
those of you who lease, that might suck because something might just seem like, oh, it's only 10 minutes away, but it's not just 10 minutes away, it's 10 miles away. So
yeah, and that's
I guess
something
it's how
definitely
you
keep in
see
mind.
it, but yeah,
But I like that in Dallas, there was like never any traffic. Like
never. I
every time
mean,
I've gone.
it's starting a little bit because obviously it's getting heavily populated now. But yeah, like unless it's literally rush hour lasts for about 30 minutes between like 5 to 5:30, and that's it, or like 5:30 to 6.
Gotcha, gotcha. So let me ask you something. Um, did Rutgers prepare you for like job interviews or anything like that, or is that something you had to learn on your own?
So like I said, man, there was resources, right? I did take advantage of those resources, at least in my senior year, where I was like going to all their career fairs or all their job fairs, building my resume with them. kind of doing like these little prompt interviews with them. Um, so yeah, they did prepare me, but again, it's on each individual to go and like put themselves out there and try to take advantage of these resources, right? That as well as I actually started to interview in my last year, not even my last semester. So that, although I didn't get any job with the interviewing I was doing in my final year, that really helped me kind of like again build the confidence, kind of understand like, okay, this is what a job interview process is like. Um, and like these are the questions, these are how questions will be formulated, this is how I should be answering things, this is how I should present myself. Like afterwards, if it's like your first time interviewing and you're not fully prepared, right, they might come to you afterwards and like, hey, do you have any questions for me? And then you might just be like, oh, like what is it that I should ask, right? But I feel like when you have like all these, like when you're constantly interviewing and you're getting more experience, like with each interview, whether it goes good or bad, it's just a learning process. So even if it goes bad, I mean, you're learning something about it, like what went wrong, where could I have improved on. So to answer your question, yes, but I had to go ahead and take advantage of those resources myself.
How many companies did you interview with before getting your like first career? And where do you think you went wrong? Like, what lessons did you learn about yourself, your interview style? That maybe, hey, I talked too much about this topic and not that topic. Maybe I didn't have good eye contact. Maybe I was too energetic and I came off as manic, or I was too reserved and I came off like I don't care. You know, what did you notice early on in your interview process that you corrected that maybe other people are making the same mistake?
Um, I think with me, one thing I did was I would talk too fast, right? I wouldn't take breaks. I would try to like jumble up all my thoughts and spit it out. Which honestly, if I had like, I feel like certain interviews could have went better if I just sat back for a second, thought about what they asked me, and then answered, right? Like thought about what my answer would be and then answered. Because I started to notice that like they really don't mind you taking a second to think about how to answer the question. Um, so I feel like that's one thing I should have done. I feel like as far as the eye contact goes, I kind of had it on lock, right? Trying to see. I think I was pretty good off the rip, and the reason I say that is because obviously I had a lot of those like practice interviews that I did with Rutgers for like a whole semester, right? Um, and really, I didn't interview at that many companies for the amount of jobs I have. Right, for my first company, I interviewed at 3 places before I got the job. After that, I interviewed at 2 places, and then the third, I got my job, and then I work as a contractor as well right now at Blue Cross Blue Shield. That was just a one interview, and I landed the role. Um, but again, I think it's because of all those years of just practice, right? Like even if it be those practice interviews, as well as just the fact that I had like like 6 to 7 different interviews, I feel super confident in being able to talk, right? And especially like with the tech field, you're selling yourself on a certain skill. So as long as you're confident in that skill, then really what it is that soft skill of being able to speak, right? Speak publicly, be able to just communicate properly.
You made a point that I agree with. Is at the end of the day, you have a value, you have skill sets, but
Yeah,
if you can't communicate those skill sets to the person interviewing you, who wants your skills for money,
yeah,
you're going to be left to your own devices. So that's the important thing. Is like you can know a lot, but if they don't know how much you know or how you can use it for them, like that's important.
yeah,
To give an example, I know a lot of software developers who they tell companies, "Oh, I built this in Java, or I've built this in I don't know Spark or Magento or this and that." And the problem is, it's like, well, have you built anything in a business environment that was revenue generating, or was it always a cost center? So it's nice to talk
correct.
about your hobbies, and obviously early on, I think they'll just care that you can code, but
Yeah, yeah, of
but you
course.
want to just frame it in such a way that, well, where could you take that in our case? Like you have a lot of hobbies, but could you build something for us that could make
Yeah, how will
money?
that benefit us? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Um, Let me see. Outside of work, like you've mentioned, being involved in like the mushes and stuff like that, are there any? Does Dallas have any sort of YM or anything like that, or are there any soccer clubs
Oh,
that you're part
dude, they
of?
have, yeah. So I don't know if they have a YM in specific. I'm sure they do, but each masjid here has a ton going on for the community, right? So you'll find a program going on almost every day of the week. So I'll tell you about what I'm specifically involved in afterwards. But for example, like Epic has like they had this kind of like a shooter drill, right? Like what would happen if a shooter came into the masjid, right? They had a drill for that for the kids. They have like like the CPR certified program. They have that, and then, again, this is all paid by the masjid, right? That's just trying to get the community involved. Um, and then, for example, they have something like Qalam Institute. I'm not sure if you heard of them, but they have programs 2 to 3 days a week where they have like it's a youth program where they just have someone come in and speak. And again, they don't jump too heavily on Islam, like you should be praying 5 times a day, like this, like this, like this, right? Like I went to them 2 3 weeks ago, and all they were talking about was friendship and like why maintaining good friendship is important in Islam and otherwise.
Yeah.
So they have a ton of programs. Something I do outside of work. I joined there's a ton of tennis clubs here. It's actually one a 3 minute walk away from my apartment. So I joined that. Try to play tennis in my free time. Just try to stay active, right? Especially being in an area where I don't really know too many people, right? I don't have too many friends. I also don't work, so I don't have any. Not that I don't work. I don't work in person, so I don't really have any colleagues, right, where I could just hang out with after work. So I try to keep myself involved by volunteering in these masjid events, masjid programs. Try to go out and I like playing tennis, so I go try to play tennis at the tennis center. See if I can meet people. Just keep it moving like that.
How are you with tennis? Like, would you say you're a three, you're a four,
I
4.5?
would say I'm like a 6.5 to a 7.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. On not like a this is like on a scale of just regular people, not like on a professional athletic scale, right? But I would say 7. But as of late, maybe like a 5, just because I don't really have someone else to play with where I'm able to like pick up on those skills of one on one.
Yeah.
So really, I just go and have to play with like the racket wall, and just hit it back and forth by myself.
Yeah.
A little lonely, but still fun.
Yeah, he was like, I'm lonely. I'm so lonely.
Yeah, man, I feel that sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, but it helps. I have some family here. I mean, some cousins, but they're all married. Have kids that are like 8, 9 in elementary, middle school. So obviously, they're pretty busy with their lives. It's not like I'm meeting up with them often. But it's still good to have people that I could reach out to at an arm's distance.
Gotcha. Um, when you look at your current job, what
hmm
what do you think you have taken from previous jobs that you think is valuable here? Like, what skills did you use in your first job that you use in your second, and what skills from the first two are also helpful in the third?
So something I took specifically from my first job was my soft skills, right? Being able to communicate, being able to get up during the stand-up meeting and kind of speak, being able to. And my first job was very, very hands-on, right? Like I wasn't just a developer. I was kind of doing the BA role as well, where I was gathering the requirements from the client, um, preparing A&D documents, which is pretty much like, okay, it's a document that pretty much displays like this is what my program is doing, this is what it can do for you, and this is kind of just how to manipulate your way through the program. Um, so because it was a small company, I got to like touch up on all these different things rather than just going in and being like, I gotta develop, which honestly helped me a lot moving forward because I was able to present myself with these skills, saying, hey, not only am I a developer, but I'm able to come in and speak to clients. I'm able to communicate with clients, be able to gather requirements. I'm able to prepare documents for the client after I develop the product.
Yeah.
So um, and then for my second two jobs, I would say those were a lot more technical. So it was really just hard skill of like coding. It is a little different though. I did move to Java, so now I'm a Java developer rather than a Power BI tool developer. Um, But again, like I said, man, it's very, very important to know what skill you're strong at because that's what you're selling, right? And then another big, big thing is the soft skill of being able to talk.
Yeah.
So as long as you got those two down, I think like you could continue to excel forward and just develop, right? Like obviously your skills are just going to be built better and better with the years that you go and that you gain experience. The good thing about me was because I was jumping through a lot of different companies in my first 2 to 3 years, I got to get different like domain experience, right? So yes, you're a developer, you're a Java developer, but you're not just in like the tech field or the health industry, right? Like I got to work on the health industry, tech industry, and you were mentioning earlier fintech, right? So that's what I did with Power BI. That was a fintech tool. So um, yeah, I got lost a little there, but I hope that answers your question.
No, no, it absolutely answers my question. And you know, I actually was curious if you've heard of the fintech company Fursa Capital. They're actually at the Epic Suites. Um,
I have not known.
they're actually looking for developers, so you might wanna
Really?
you might
What are
want
they called? Let me look into that, man. I'll be there for Zohar today.
yeah, Fursa, Fursa,
And they're at those suites that are like right
right
across
across
the
the
Mushy
parking
parking
lot.
lot, right?
Yeah. So I went there. So the CEO has two companies. One is Mecca Digital, which is a
Okay.
Muslim version of LinkedIn, really. And the other one is Fursa. Fursa has actually been making a lot of traction recently. And the CEO is part of some of the think tanks that I'm in. So we have these think tanks, which is basically a group of like executives, and sometimes people come to us with like a situation or for help. You know, they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I have an established business, I need to grow it. What will it take? Like, what are the next steps? And
Yeah.
we do it pro bono. So the CEO is actually, I know him personally. His name's Usman, and yeah, he's running for Sun. He actually mentioned recently he was looking for he's looking for a co-founder. He's looking for a design person. He's looking for like a business development person. And he's looking for a developer. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, who knows? There could be something there.
Yeah. Inshallah, inshallah.
So what is your current job title? And if you had to explain to like a layman or a non-tech person like what you do in like a minute or two or less, you know,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like? Like, what's your elevator pitch, so to speak?
Okay, so real quick, I'm a full stack developer, and for those of you who are unaware of what a full stack is, so there's a front end and back end. Front end is pretty much what you as a user view, right? So the apps that you look at on your phone, that's the front end. What the apps look like, what the design is. When you click it, the functionality that takes place at that click, that's done on the back end side of things. So a full stack developer pretty much means you're doing both front end and back end work, right? So you're designing it as well as implementing the functionality. So what I do specifically with my role is um, so we do it for the HR, right? So HR has to kind of like sometimes when they input data for either a new employee or an existing, they use like they use our HR system, right? The ADP HR system. So I pretty much designed the front end of that. So what it looks like for when companies come in and they're playing around, their HR is playing around with whatever they got to play around with, other new or existing employees,
Yeah.
as well as on the back end, right? So like whenever they click next, whenever they click submit, like I'm making sure that whatever needs to be done is being done, right? Like when they click next, they're moving on to the next page. When they click submit, it's being submitted and uploaded to wherever it needs to go. So yeah, quick pitch. That's kind of what I do in layman terms.
Gotcha. No, that's definitely interesting. Do you manage any people in your current role? Like, it's a valid question. Like, do you have an
Mm-hmm.
intern that gets assigned to you that shadows you, or you have to mentor anything like that, or any junior
Yeah.
developers?
So really, really funny actually, right? Because I am a developer, I'm still pretty new in this company. I would say less than a year still. But there's someone who actually works there, and I don't. She's not technical. She's I think like a Scrum Master or something. I'm not really too sure what her role is, but she's been there for 10 years, and it's crazy to me because she actually works with me but under me, right? So it's like I'm kind of letting her know what to do, how to do things, how to like you know navigate through the application and whatnot. But other than her, I don't really manage anyone else. I don't think I'm at the level where I'm ready to do that. At least I don't feel that within myself.
Mm.
I feel maybe once I build my skill a little more to an advanced level, I'll feel the confidence to be able to, like, someone comes to me with a question, I'll be like, okay, hey, this is what you need to do. Rather than just kind of get stuck and be like, ah, man, like I am management, but I'm unable to direct you, at least from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, I feel that way sometimes as a CIO. I've been C-level for a couple of years. The
Mm-hmm.
buck stops here. So like people below me can ask me for help, but whenever I'm struggling, I'm just like, yo, who do I go to? You
Mm-hmm.
know, like you
Mm-hmm.
you are
Okay.
the guy, right? So it's interesting. It's interesting you have the scrum master below. I've been a scrum master, by the way. There was a time I was a IT portfolio manager. I had to fill in as a scrum
Mm-hmm.
master for a while. I did not enjoy it, and I hate to say
Yeah.
it. I'm getting married. My fiance was actually she's in special ed, but she's looking to transition into tech or business.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw this role, scrum master. She asked me what they do, and I was like, "Look, Mitchell, I've done it. I did it for weeks, and I did it very well." I said I could not tell you the value of a scrum master after I did it. I could not tell you honestly what they do. Like if our scrum master was out, I was like, I think the team kind of runs itself. I Not to diminish the field. I mean, I'm not insulting all scrum masters out there. I know they're very religious about their role,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. Basically, business has existed for centuries. IT has existed for decades.
Yeah.
This is a new role, but I feel like we've existed for so long and still accomplished a lot and
Yeah.
delivered a lot. It's when you introduce this new role with someone who's scheduling meetings and stuff, and that's what I look at. Is like there's a lot of scheduling involved. I'm like, I don't know what you do exactly.
Yeah.
So for you
By the
to
way, I wanted to ask you something now that you mentioned that you actually worked as a scrum master for a little bit. Um, so I hear that, like, it sounds like you're moving throughout a ton of different companies, jobs, roles. Even with what you have going on with your own company, you
yeah.
probably indulge with a bunch of different companies. So how do you kind of maneuver with the jobs? With actually, where do you apply? What resources do you use to apply the jobs? Um, and yeah, kind of like just walking me through that. Like, what are you using to get these jobs? Where are you applying?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, I use the same resources that everyone else, like LinkedIn, Indeed, etc. And yeah, I have my own consulting company, Chaudhry Enterprise Solutions. So a lot of the jobs I had, quote unquote, are actually contracts that are through my company, but like I'm an embedded employee or I'm an embedded contractor, or like I use their resources. Like I'll come in and the people below me, the directors or managers, they report to me even though I'm an outsider. But yeah, I'm still like inside, managing and stuff. So there's also a lot of networking, just networking. So,
Mm-hmm.
so for example, going to Google Dev Fest, ServiceNow CreatorCon, Microsoft, what is it? Microsoft Reignite, or
Okay.
Microsoft Ignite, Amazon reInvent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, shamelessly networking, plugging yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
using your classmates, man. I mean, the people who I was classmates with, 10 plus years ago, even your high school like classmates, keep an eye on them. I met a
Yeah.
guy from freaking. There's a guy from high school who's like a big lawyer for cyber policy at a company. I was able to leverage him. So just keeping in touch
Nice.
and
Nice.
growing your brand. Let me tell you, like it helps with getting contracts when people for I have a website. It's on WordPress. It's not that impressive, but it's still there. It helps to have a website, even a personal one. You can make a personal website on WordPress. I encourage you to do so. Having a
Mm-hmm.
personal website helps. I have a business card. I have a heavy LinkedIn. I'm always posting. I have a podcast, and if people Google my name, Muhammad Chaudhry CIO, dude, you have like 12 results,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Okay.
growing, and that's the cool thing. Is like that's what also helps me get these contacts. Is like sometimes companies come to me, they drop me a line in my email because they see the guy. They're like, oh, he's on YouTube, he's on
Yeah.
Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, Anchor, all these different podcasts. Not just that, there are websites I don't even upload to who have started indexing my stuff. Or
Wow.
I don't know if they're stealing it, but like yeah, there's other websites I've never even heard of that have my podcast on them.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that definitely helps. And I was in government for a while. I was a W-2 employee. I was a full-time employee.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left government after 2 years, I was the chief of applications for the VA. That's a huge job. That's an awesome like freaking management level role, and that
Yeah.
definitely helped me after. Like
And
now,
And what skills did you bring to the table that helped you land that job?
Just my soft skills, my communication
Your soft
skills.
skills.
Because
Okay,
at the
wow.
end of the day, you have to build these channels of communication, right? So, for example, in Teams, I don't just have a group chat for everyone to talk about everything. There is one chat for emergencies for stakeholders. There's one chat for emergencies for developers to tell me and skip all their other levels of management. Like, if they know I'm the only one who can remove a blocker, we have a chat where a junior developer can skip 6 levels of management to get straight to the top because they know that this is critical and this literally needs to be addressed like now.
Yeah.
So just that's important. The ability to use SharePoint to create dashboards. I mean, I would take the initiative to have a dashboard to show, okay, what projects have burned through this much money? How many tickets have they gone through? How are we doing with timeline? Do we need more time? And just communicating with stakeholders. You got to tell these non-technical MBA folks what is going on under the roof because they don't know, right? They're the
Yeah.
sponsors. The sponsors don't always know like what the technical stuff is. They
Yeah.
just know that we need to migrate this, or refactor that. They don't know why. You got to explain technical debt to them. You have to explain how it's going to impact business operations. So
Yeah.
that's all it takes. And what's good is, I mean, I like where I am in my career. Like in the last couple of months, the Minnesota State Lottery, for example, wanted me to be their CIO. Chicago
Wow.
State University, they reached out to me. I still have actually an offer letter somewhere. They were offering me, I think, like 135K,
Wow.
which was a lot from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Chicago State University wanted me to be their CIO, right?
Wow.
I've interviewed for CIO of United Healthcare
Wow.
for the tri-state. So United Healthcare, by the way, it's weird. The United Healthcare Group, every state actually has its own like United Healthcare. It's kind of like
Yeah.
Blue Cross. So when I say CIO, I don't mean like the whole company. I
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
the
You mean
tri-state.
like one sector of it.
One sector, and not even the tri-state like New York City, New Jersey's like United Healthcare. They wanted me to be CIO for Optum, which is like the pharmacy component or whatever
Yeah.
of United Health. Like if you look at United Healthcare card, it says Optum RX or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the great thing. I've interviewed for, and this is like literally within the last months. I'm not gonna say over my whole career, but like in the last few months, even I think 6 months ago, I interviewed for CIO of Fulton County in Georgia. It was
Wow.
CIO or deputy CIO. So that's the cool thing is that as you build your brand, you still sometimes you have to apply to these companies, and then sometimes they reach out to you and say, hey, I seen some of your work. I seen
Yeah.
you worked in government. Would you be interested? I even recently interviewed for CIO or director of IT, I think, for something called Abilene in Texas. It's some small city.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, and CIO for some small community college in like southern Texas by like Houston. I think it was like Costa. I don't even remember the name, but yeah, man, it's just soft skills. You definitely have to be technical. I think there's a lot of CIOs who we don't have any technical knowledge left. Like there was a time I would I've made mobile apps like in Xcode with like Objective C or Android apps in Java. I don't remember any of that. Like if you open up Android Studio or Xcode right now, I would not tell you the first step, bro. But no, as you move up, the most important thing is the soft skills, and it comes in handy with vendors.
Yeah.
Being able to negotiate lower rates with vendors, being able to work with your different vendors to find a resource. Like if I lose a cloud architect, hiring someone, waiting a few months, interviewing, bro, I don't have time for that. I need to go through all my vendors, come up with a JD, tell them what I need, and knowing what you need, being that self-aware, like that's important, especially with high-level resources.
Yeah.
So that's just that. I hope that answers how I do what I do. If you have anything more, please ask, because this is helpful for the audience as well to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask about the vendor stuff. So because I know with the vendors, there's usually different levels of vendors, right? Like one vendor will recruit another vendor, right? So are you just are you just a part of the chain of vendors just at the top right before it gets to whatever company?
Yeah. So, what Chaudhry Enterprise Solutions specializes in, it's me and a couple of other executives. We've partnered up. So one thing we specialize in is IT strategy. So coming into companies that have money, but they don't know how to grow their portfolio, we help with that. I also do temporary interim CIO or fractional CIO engagement. So sometimes a company loses their CIO. It might be like maternity leave. They're just gone for a little while. I'll
You'll
fill
kind of
in
fill in.
I'll fill in that gap. Or some companies, like some startups, they need a fractional CIO. So fractional meaning they don't need a guy 9 to 5. They just need a guy to come in Monday, define the week for the engineers, then come on Friday and see, did we do the week or did we deviate? If so, what needs to be done over the weekend? And that's it. Like they just have a little bit of money and they only need a little bit of guidance. And then over time it'll grow into, now they need someone full time. But yeah, I am one of the high level vendors. I deal with staff augmentation. So if companies need staff, I have a lot of vendors I partner with to get them staff. And I do management consulting and audit. So I look at companies and say, okay, you have a department here that could be merged into this department. You have some people here who could be laid off, which sucks. I do tell companies how to do layoffs. Or growing. Sometimes a startup has 50 people. They go like, yo, Mohammed, we want to double. But does that mean we double HR and sales and development and this and that? And I go like, no. You want to triple your developers. You only need one more HR person. You only need one more marketing person. You need three more, people in customer support. Like that scalability, someone needs to come and tell them how to do it intelligently. It needs to be data driven.
Yeah.
So I do everything. I help with enterprise architecture. So I'll tell them like, hey, you need to move to these solutions. You need to incorporate managed services. You need to move things off premise. You need to refactor some of these applications so they can be leaner. Faster loading times and less space means a better consumer experience, which means more money, more retention, all that stuff.
Wow. And for you, again, there is soft skill, but with that comes like, it's not just soft skill, right? Like for you to know why you would need this many developers or why you allocate time and money for this versus that resource, right?
Yeah, it's always
was that something you felt like maybe you picked up
along the way,
previous roles?
Yeah. Like when I was a developer on one project, I got very good at estimating how long one project, like enhancing an existing website or building something from scratch. I knew in my mind, based on all the moving pieces, all the different user stories and features, how this website or application is going to behave. I learned how to do that. Then when I was doing a portfolio, I was like, okay, I know basically, again, the math, I've learned how to do it. Now I just have to multiply. And you just use that experience as you go up. And you know what sort of resource, like for example, if we're building a website and we're doing the front end, I know we're not having the back end guys right now. I tell them, okay, for scheduling purposes, like we'll have them at the second half of the project. Like we'll have the front end guys develop this part of it, and then they can come at the end, or we can do things concurrently. It depends on what makes sense, because you always want to avoid too many cooks in the kitchen. And that's something you think about is like, this project that involves 200 people, but it doesn't mean all 200 at once. Like the security guys, if we're building an application, bro, why is security here? They're not even they have nothing to test. Same goes for QA, right? Why do we have
QA guys? Yeah, like they're not even useful until the end.
Until the end. So why are they here at the beginning of the project? Like what? So that's the thing that you kind of learn is like basically also, it's like kind of like a conductor. Like you have this orchestra, but when everyone plays their instrument is key to the whole experience, right? And that's something you learn.
And I think it's you being in the position that you are, I think it's great that you have that technical background. Because I see it, right? Like my project manager, he doesn't know anything. I come to question. He's basically a scrum master, is what I see him as, and someone who just makes sure he's handling the stand-up meeting and whatnot. Because I'll come to him with even like the slightest technical question or mishap, and he'll just kind of be like, yo, he'll just throw his hands up and be like, I have no idea. Like you just gotta ask this guy or that guy.
See, I will say this. He is kind of doing something correctly. I don't think he's doing it correctly enough, though. So I am self-aware enough where if someone comes to me, people think I'm the highest informatical authority. Honestly, I usually tell people, bug the CTO with that stuff. He knows, right?
For sure. But I feel like having a little bit of like a technical background.
You have to.
Whether it helps you with answering questions or with, like you just said, you understand when a QA is needed versus when a front end or back end engineer is needed, right?
Yeah.
So if you didn't really have technical background and understanding, you wouldn't really know. Like, I mean, I'm sure over time, but off rip, it would take some time for you to be like, okay, this is what a QA's job is. This is when they're needed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You definitely need the technical know-how.
Mm-hmm.
I like that when someone comes to me and I don't even know the answer, I at least know the exact employee that I can send
Mm-hmm.
them to. So if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, Mohammed, we're thinking about redoing our VoIP stuff, and we use something like Avaya, right? Who do we talk to?" I'll be like, "Dude, you definitely want to talk to like the infrastructure architect. He'll help you with all the AV stuff and setting up like the virtual phone lines. Yeah, you definitely have to be technical because I'll tell you something. I've had vendors come at me and spit nonsense, and it's always nice to shut them down because you can tell like they're talking BS,
Yeah.
right? Like they're saying,
Yeah. And I've had vendors reach out to me through LinkedIn, right, where I'll talk to them, and you really get to know which vendors know technical things
yeah,
versus which have absolutely no idea.
yeah.
So
Oh, 100%, 100%. You
yeah.
can tell when they're full, and that's what I love. Like I'll have pre-sales guys in front of us, like they're going like, "Yeah, we have the software that automates your sales thing," and I'm like, "Well, right now I'm the CIO for a paper company. I don't know what like the software you're selling us. You say it's gonna work, automate this, and this, bro. We don't even do all the stuff you're mentioning.
Yeah.
So why are you telling me I need to buy it, buy it, buy it? That doesn't make sense. And you got to be technical. Like I love when my DevOps people are talking about the CI/CD pipelines and automation, and we're gonna use Ansible or Jenkins for QA stuff, and this, and penetration testing. We're gonna incorporate it into the development lifecycle. And I can see my CEO or CDO or CFO, who I hate. I always hate the CFOs in every company I've had. I don't know why. I don't know. The finance guys are always like the most like they're like the last boss. But I love watching everyone else's face and go like CDs. I know what CDs are discs, right? And I'm like, yo, you can tell they have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm just like, yeah. So if QA is using SonarQube, like how automated testing, what's that going to look like? Because my problem with automated testing is some softwares, if there's a bug, even if that bug is deliberate, it won't allow that piece of software to progress into production, and some people can't manually like release it, and that's the problem with some of these softwares. Are so like focused, or sometimes they're very sensitive. Like they start flagging a lot of stuff that is just functionalities. I'm like, bro, these aren't bugs; these are features.
Yeah.
Man, and it's nice. By the way, you're actually the first guest to actually ask me more about my workflow because I share a lot of anecdotes, but I'm like, man, there's only so much. I don't know, bragging or talking about yourself you can do. It's always more organic when someone else
I mean,
does it.
we're in the same industry, so I think if any time to talk about what you do, now would be the best time, right?
Yeah, man, 100%. And I'll tell you, I know you do consulting. You definitely want to incorporate and make a LinkedIn page for your company and get started now, because that's one thing is like I've been consulting for 10 plus years, and you see the dividends. I think after like 5+ years, that's when you start going to these industry events and people take you seriously. Like when you have your own company versus independent consulting, like it adds a lot of credibility. It looks legit.
So I'm actually an independent consultant, but through another company. So I'm not like an independent contractor.
Gotcha. But you still, what? I'll tell you, man. You definitely want to incorporate now. Start building your brand now. Like, make your Samir.
I was thinking about that. I was like, yo, I'm gonna hit this guy up right as soon as we're done with this podcast, and try to get some detail.
Yeah, 100%. Because I'll tell you, like, aging your LLC also helps. Like, the older your LLC, the better. Because, for example, Chaudhry Enterprise Solutions is actually not that old. It used to actually be another under a different name, someone else's name, and then I bought it and rebranded it. But for the last 10 years, like I've just been, there was one company I consulted under. Then after 5 years, it was called another company. Then during COVID, I rebranded, and then became Chaudhry Enterprise Solutions. Wow. But having a company that's like 10 years old, it adds so much value. I actually wish I kept the original name, because when I reincorporated or like changed the name, what ended up happening was now it says my company's only a few months old, and I'm like, oh, you lose that history. So I was like, I should have kept the name and done a DBA, like doing business ads rather than reincorporated. But yeah, we'll get into the nitty gritty stuff, man. There's so much to share with you, bro. So the keys to success.
I'm trying to be like you one day, man.
Yo, man, inshallah, bro. Be better than me, and then give me a job, bro.
Yeah, inshallah. But we'll definitely take this offline sometime later and discuss.
Yo, 100%, man, 100%. So Yeah, so the next question, man, are there any regrets of mistakes you made in your career? And for example, I wrote a few notes like, for example, recommending someone who's like for a job and then the performance made you look bad, or suggesting an initiative with no data to support it and then it turned into like a bad idea, something like that
Within my career,
within your career. Yeah.
um, I don't think anything, honestly, no, man, because one, I would always, as a developer who's not in a management role, it was more so me taking orders and whatnot. But I know I've worked with on projects where like I went through the entire thing and then boom, it was just like, yeah, man, that was useless because we had no reason for this project to even be done. But no, from to answer your question, from my end, I don't think I've ever taken an initiative where it went south. I wish this was like an interview where I could come up with an answer for you, but to be honest, I don't think so. I've ever experienced that.
I I have so a few things that'll be happening to my podcast that are interesting is I'll be getting a co-host soon, inshallah.
Okay.
She's just finishing up some professional engagements, but she said in a couple of months she'll be available. And then I actually have another sister as well who's planning to actually do my sort of Q&A. Like she'll
Hmm.
be in my seat answering me questions. And when it comes to mistakes, man, you're gonna see it's gonna be a whole memoir. I'm gonna be like, I got a bunch. Don't worry, I have
Yeah,
no
yeah. I
shame.
mean, you especially with the level that you're at, right? Like more of a management level. I'm sure you go through that a lot. But like
Oh
I said,
yeah.
me being in the position that I am, where I get information and I'm getting tasks from the manager, I'm not really in a position where like I'm like, oh, this was a waste or things went south.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Do you have any certifications like Scrum Master, Microsoft Architect, anything like that?
I do, yes. So the first certification I got was in college. I took a class. Um, I'm forgetting what the class was, but I remember they had us take a master the mainframe. It was a certification offered by IBM, and it was like 10% of your grade. I took it because I'm like, obviously 10% of your grade is a huge chunk.
Yeah.
And number two, it was a paid certification from school, so why not just adds builds my resume. Whether this is a skill I'm going to use or not, it's cool to show that hey, I've completed the certificate. And then when I graduated, that's when I really started to do, take certificates a little more seriously. So I have a certificate. My first job, I was, Cognos developer. So I have two certs in Cognos, both offered by IBM. Because I was a partnered IBM employee, any IBM certs were free. So I got certs in Cognos developer as well as something they called rules. That's what their language within Cognos was called to do calculations. So I have a certificate in rules as well. And right now I'm actually I signed up for LinkedIn Premium where they have like a bunch of certs you could do. So I'm working on one right now for Sonar Cube. So I'm trying to think, like I'm right now I'm a developer. I know it's only been 3 years since I graduated and I changed my roles three times. Right, I went from a Power BI developer to a BA to a full stack developer. So I don't know. I don't really enjoy developing. Sometimes it gets really, really, really frustrating and stressful. And I don't know if this is something I want to see myself doing, for the next 20, 30 years. So I'm just,
Don't
right
do
now
it,
I told
bro.
myself,
Become a CIO. Just move up the chain
yeah,
and
man, once we get to talking, that's the next step for me. But honestly, what my career plan was, so I am like I said, getting these different certs, trying to like just step into different fields, kind of just see what I like. I'm trying QA out, see what that's about. But I think what I would want to do if things were like a perfect route was I would want to become a BA and then use that to become a project manager very, very, very soon. Like I wouldn't want to waste like 4 or 5 years as a BA. It would be like 1 to max 2 years and then try to land a project manager role.
yeah, as a former project manager, I endorse that. Project management is pretty cool,
Yeah.
and so is
I
prod.
feel like yeah, and I feel like it's me, given that I have that technical background, um, and then for me to jump into a role like that, I think where I wouldn't need to be so heavily hands on with the technical stuff. I think it's one, a lot less stressful, and two, like I would be a good fit for that position, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, like assuming that everything else that comes with project management, aside from like the little technical knowledge, I'm able to cope with.
Yeah, yeah. For the most part, honestly, like I hate this trend of technical product manager, technical project
Hmm.
manager. These aren't technical jobs, man.
Yeah,
You
they're
just got to
not.
be
They're
good with.
not.
You got to be good with your scheduling. You got to be good with your risk register. You got to be good with your
Hmm.
communications and presentations. And you have
Correct.
to know the agile methodology. Like I think that's the thing
Correct.
with Scrum masters that, you can have a project manager who doubles as a Scrum master. You can have a project manager who uses the agile methodology. That works. I feel like Scrum Master is a job that by itself is kind of not wholly justified, except in
Hmm.
certain circumstances. But project management's awesome. I did it. I enjoyed it. I liked it because you didn't you would build something, then you're done. You build something else, you're done, and it gives you a lot to talk about in future conversations. That I've done this. I build things from scratch, or I enhanced certain things, or honestly even reverse engineered. Like I did projects where they'd be like, "Yeah, Mohammed, we tried to do this thing like 5 years ago, and we're trying to basically repurpose those servers, but we want you to reverse engineer everything that was developed, whatever project we were creating something. We have no documentation. You got to create documentation for all that stuff. So
Hmm.
in the future, when we wipe all these servers, whatever, we can, if we ever try to do something like this in the future, we have all the documentation."
Yeah,
And those are interesting. I
but
love those projects.
with that role, you wouldn't need to be technically hands on, right?
No, no, not at all. It's a
Right.
conflict of interest almost if a project manager gets involved, because the thing is, you have to think about the big picture. And when you get involved in the work, like that distracts you a lot. And if
Hmm.
anything, I think you're more objective if you're non-technical, right?
Okay.
Because if you're technical, really, you're just gonna know like one. If your employee is
Hmm.
struggling with something, then you're gonna feel impulsive. You're gonna be like, oh, I should help him out because I know it. I might know more than him, and like
Hmm.
then when you help that one employee and not the others, that's where the conflict of interest comes in. Then the other employees are gonna get upset that, hey, Samir got help from Mohammed and he did his stuff on time. We're late, but I mean our project manager's not helping us out. That's why we're late,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
so not being technical actually makes it easier to stay
Yeah.
uninvolved and think about the big picture, which is scheduling, budgeting,
Okay.
needs, stuff like that.
But even not being technical, I think, and again, you've actually been in the role, but I think knowing the SDLC, right, the software development lifecycle,
Oh yeah,
is
you got to know that.
super
Yeah,
important, right? Like
yeah.
that's a must for you to be aware of. And that's what I mean by like the technical part. I'm not saying like, hey, I know Java, so I'll be good in it, but I
Oh
understand
yeah, yeah. You should know those
and you
terms.
mentioned like the agile methodology, right? Or like waterfall, whatever you have, like you're aware of the software development lifecycle from the beginning all the way to the end.
Yeah.
So if you have that, like I feel like it's very, very helpful for the role.
Oh, 100%. That definitely helps. And then,
Yeah.
product management is definitely something you should look into, as well as program management. I enjoy
Hmm.
being a program manager, being the guy, running things, putting the fear of God into my employees. That's always fun. So you have industry certs, and I mean that's definitely very helpful, and it's good that you got them. That like either the school paid, well, you paid for the school to get them,
Yeah.
and then your employer paid for them. That's definitely helpful, man. I mean that's if people have tuition reimbursement, I encourage them to take advantage of it. If your employer will pay for certifications, honestly, even if it's not something you're going to use, like I know some people at some of these finance companies, they're like, yeah, they'll only pay for like Lean Six Sigma or something, because that's like sort of
Hmm.
we use that, but they won't pay for anything technical. Get the Lean Six Sigma certification, man. Like learn how to save companies money and improve processes. Even if it's finance, if
You
you're an
said what?
IT,
I want to take notes. You said learn Six Sigma.
Lean Six Sigma, yeah,
Six Sigma. Okay.
yeah. So like get these finance or whatever oriented certifications, or if they have certifications for freaking HR, do that. Even if you're in IT, you never know when something like this is gonna come in handy.
Yeah.
Um, Let me see. Wow, we've actually gone through. Um, we've gone through a lot of this. Okay, so we're actually towards the tail end. Um, what words of motivation can you give to college kids right now who are graduating in a very tough market? What advice do you have for them?
Honestly, man, a lot of that we talked about from the beginning, right? If you're in college, yo, take advantage of your time and the resources provided by your college, right? Again, it's not just about the education that the college is offering. Like, there's so much more, right? Go like if your college has a large network, right? Definitely attend your job fairs. Take advantage of your career resources. Things like that help build your career, your resume. Kind of just get like some soft skill going with practicing. Again, if your college has resources, oftentimes some college have resources like Handshake, right, where it's like an internal um, way of students being able to reach out to these companies and apply to companies rather than just going on LinkedIn where everyone has access to. And yeah, as far as the time, like I said, man, like time is fleeting, and me personally, I didn't understand this until I graduated. Where I'm like, dude, like time is really, really flying, right? And another thing I noticed is like if you get to work on that while you're still in college, right? You build up on your time management moving forward. Like it's really, very, really useful because once you're done with college, right? It's like for the first time in your life, you no longer have a structured schedule, right? Like when you're in school from literally five, like pre-K, you know that okay, from this time to this time, I go to school. I got to get homework done before the next day. Like I have Saturday, Sunday off. I have these days off. But once you graduate, it's not like that. It's like okay, I work 9 to 5, but what about after 5? Like that's just me time, and I could just either do nothing with it or make the best of it. So time management, make sure you're maximizing your time and taking advantage of it, and resources in college, man, make sure you're hopping onto the resources, and that actually gives you a lot of good direction, right? Like you might come to find out about LinkedIn. You might have a resource where they're showing you how to build your LinkedIn so that like companies will look at it and be like, oh, like, it'll catch their eye. So yeah, those two things: advantage of the college resources and time management.
Nice. Thank you. So, with that said, inshallah, we'll wrap it up. And I want to thank
Yeah,
you, Samir, for setting aside the time. It's good to have you on the
yeah,
podcast. And, after this, we'll definitely talk more. And there'll be some
yeah,
some bloopers and shenanigans happening.
yeah.
But unfortunately, this
Yeah.
is where we'll end the recording because
Hmm.
I think
Yeah, yeah.
everything of
And
value has been
honestly, thank
said.
you for having me, man. I'm in my Joe Rogan phase right now. Like I'm probably gonna get off and just start talking to myself in the shower, thinking like, yo, I really made it.
No, it helps. I'll tell you, like
Yeah,
being on this podcast has credibility, and you're
yeah,
helping other people. So I'm kind of pushing myself that if anyone's watching, feel free to join us because it'll also look good if people Google your name and they see you were interviewed by a
yeah,
CIO. They're gonna be like, this guy must be important. That
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
so and you
Yeah,
got
so
the
thank
Joe
you for
Rogan
that,
look.
man.
You got the mic and the headphone. I don't have that.
Yeah.
I'm just using my MacBook.
Yeah, honestly, like I thought it looked real cool. I was like, man, I'll feel like I'm a real podcaster. That as well as my mic just wasn't working.
Yeah.
It worked out.
But inshallah, we'll end it here, and I look forward to posting this hopefully by the end of the day.
Yeah, inshallah. Let me know. I'll definitely tune in to see which parts were cut off and what wasn't.
Alright, brother. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
So